another Thursdays with ThirdPath live podcast. On every episode, you will meet thought leaders, role models, and change agents connected to the ThirdPath community. And all season long, we're exploring how you can become a work care champion for yourself, your family, and your aging loved ones. So I'm really glad you guys are joining us today. And if you're inspired what you hear, please make sure to share our podcast with someone you know. We want to keep on growing our community of role models and change agents, and you're our best contacts for finding people like that. So let me tell you, I'm going to give you a little big picture about what we're talking about today and then introduce our wonderful guests. You've probably, if you've been attending some of these Thursday with ThirdPath events this year, heard me talk about how the world is kind of going in 4 different directions when it comes to a workplace. Unfortunately, some are going back to those long-hour on-site workplaces. But what you're going to hear today is from a few more people who are really normalizing hybrid work and how helpful that is for people when they're trying to balance work and life responsibilities. There's also some out there that have more of a variable approach. Unfortunately, sometimes that's because maybe a manager is in charge and they're less supportive, but you're going to see some managers who are really supportive today. And there are places like ThirdPath where we're actually normalizing having less work hours per year over the course of the year, so that those times of the life when you have a baby at home or caring for an elder parent, you have a little bit more time for life responsibilities. And if you tuned in last month, we actually had 2 really great examples of leaders who are doing hybrid work really well. We had Greg Beecher talk about how he and his team have really kind of created a kind of a regular work week, but done it in a hybrid way. And we had Adrian Udarby, who really has created this very flexible results-only workplace. So there really is this variation, and you're going to hear some more today. But why I put this up is I wanted to remind you, it's not just where we work and when we're working, it's how much we work. And I think you'd see this from Greg, Adrian, and the 2 leaders you're going to hear about today. People who've lived an integrated life are really leading the way around change. They're the ones who are helping us really create high-performing hybrid workplaces. So what helps us turn off work? That's a big part of what we're going to be talking about today, because we're actually thinking about, okay, you know, I want to go on vacation and I really want to enjoy my vacation. Or, hey, I want to be able to figure out how to make summers work. And I really want to have time with my family over the summer. Well, I want to talk a little bit about this slide. I'll give you a little bit more information. So in theory, there's many factors that can make something easier or harder to do when it comes to vacations and summers. And you're going to hear some of this in the stories that we have brought to you today. It's a little bit about your organization. Are they an organization that's kind of full speed ahead all the time, even during the summers? Or are they an organization that maybe has started figuring out how to do a half-day Friday or something to allow people a little bit more flexibility over the summers? You're also going to hear a lot about how managers make a big difference. And we're going to be hearing from 2 managers who really have created a sense of reciprocity in their teams so that everybody can be supported to create that time that they want. It's a little bit about your family too, because what's happening at home, if you're the only one organizing these things, is going to be a little bit more challenging for you. And it's a little bit about your own skills. We're a strong believer that there's things that you can learn to do to make vacations better, more enjoyable, and your summers more enjoyable. And I think you're going to hear that from our participants today. So let me tell you a little bit about who we are going to be hearing from. First, you're going to hear from Julia Johnson. She's the Director of Employee and Labor Relations at the University of California, Davis. She manages a fully remote team, and she's the parent of 3 children, ages 1 to 6. She's going to be talking about how her ability to be this supportive manager, hey there, Julia, is really going to help us be smarter around how we can support each other to take advantage of vacations. So Julia, I think your story is so wonderful for so many reasons. one of the things I learned when talking to you was how you learned to be supportive around vacations actually because you had the opposite of a role model. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me. It's a great opportunity to think ahead about taking vacations and this summer. What a good way to start the new year off. So yeah, I was thinking a lot about, how this has been over the course of 10 years that I've worked in my at the University of California. And I've had different leaders throughout that time. And it really made me realize that your leadership is so important in how your team views taking vacation or not taking vacation, and how important role modeling is. Because I've had a supervisor that really did not take vacation and would contact people on vacation and didn't really have that balance of, okay, I'm going to leave these people alone because they're gone, and it was constant work, and you didn't really have great coverage while you were gone. You came back to a pile of work and it was easier just not to do that in the first place. And I've also had um, vice chancellors who have really from the top promoted that you need time away to recharge and rest, and that you need to not be bothered while you're away. And even in their away messages, it would say something like, I'm on vacation, recharging and resting, and I will not be reading these emails. And there was a real that's okay, a message that was okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think one of the big takeaways that I had when thinking about this was how important leadership is in role modeling, what the
Yeah.
culture will be for the team.
Yeah. And what I really also took away from our conversation was how much um your creating a team that respected that people had lives helped you develop critical methods for supporting people to take a vacation. I thought it was really interesting. For example, helping people take parental leave or take leaves helped you realize, okay, we need to create a little bit more depth in our team so we can support each other to do each other's work when we're away. So it sure seems like there's something about you living your life, your team members living their lives that help develop skills, individual skills and team skills to better support turning off work. What did you learn there? Is that true?
Yes, 100%. And I mean, so I've worked here 10 years. I've taken 3 maternity leaves. I am done having children now, but nonetheless, my team has had to, first of all, in a good way with the role modeling, they've seen me take chunks of time away, not just vacation, but maternity leaves. And also, we have people on my team who are having babies. We have people who are taking care of their elderly parents. We have people taking care of grandbabies. So we've had a lot of different experiences, and some people have had to drop their, instead of being like 100%, they go to 80% so they can have one day off a week to watch their granddaughter or different things like that. And in that happening, we've realized we can't have any person who's on an island. We need to have at least 2 people who know how to do everything. And it's funny because when these bigger things happen like that, you're like, well, why wasn't I doing that all along? Because people get sick. It's not just about taking vacation, right? Like you really realize how important having coverage and cross functionality is. So yeah, I definitely recommend doing that, or thinking about that as a good way to encourage people that, you're not the only person. It's going to be okay if you have to go out for a little bit or you want to take time away.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what helped that shape that, again, there's some individual skills, people being able to plan ahead, think about things. But I think that there's a sense of reciprocity that has been built into the team that is a lot to do with you. I would compliment you on that. But that it becomes this virtual circle where people feel like, I've been able to do this. I'm going to support you to do this. And interestingly, one of the big bugaboos that people are saying with hybrid work is that you can't really build that sense of team.
Hmm.
You're not there every day getting to know each other. And so how are you going to really build a strong culture and a strong sense of team? And it's pretty clear you've built a really good team with lots of reciprocity. I've learned from listening to you, you did a bunch of very purposeful things to build that sense of teamwork. Tell us a little bit about those those little short meetings you have and that Friday meeting you have? How did you build that sense of team?
Yeah, well, so it's interesting. So from 2014 to 2020, we were all in person. I honestly think we have a stronger culture from 2020 after COVID when we went remote until now. I guess that's been 4 years, but I feel closer to the team being remote. So how have we done that? When we were in person, we had one weekly staff meeting, like a Friday staff meeting where we would all get together and whatnot. Instead of doing that, now that we're remote, we have a huddle every morning. So from 10 to 10:30, and that's pretty short, it's just a half an hour, we have a check-in. And we always have someone different on the team lead a prompt. So like, oh, today is National What's Your Favorite Donut Day or something, or, oh, where's your favorite place you've ever gone on vacation? Just some little prompt. And then we have a team of 13, if people want some perspective on this. And so everybody goes around and it's a brief answer like jelly donuts. Okay. And then what is going on in your world right now? And people share, and maybe this just takes time of doing this every day, but I know something about everyone on my team. I know, who's building their house right now, who's getting their kitchen remodeled, whose mom is not doing well right now. People, when you do it every day, I feel like you're in a space where you can share more about what's going on in your life, work related and not work related. So, I mean, to be honest, the purpose of the huddle is to say like, okay, does anyone need anything for work today? But we really do end up sharing a lot about just our lives in general. And so I think that if you can build in some sort of quick check-in every day, I think it's helpful. I'll also add, we use Teams chat. And so it's almost better than like popping into someone's office because it feels less disruptive. You can put that you're away, please do not disturb, but you can still message someone. And then when they have a minute to see it, you can get into a conversation with them. And so we do a lot of touching base with each other through Teams. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting how well it works to be
yeah.
remote, honestly, for us.
And again, we probably won't give all the details about it, but I remember two other very specific things, something you do specifically on Fridays, but, and this is a really important message, for people creating high performing hybrid, you also purposely spend some time physically together too, and you figured out a cool way to do that. Tell us a little bit about your Fridays and spending some time together in person.
Yes. Okay, so I mentioned that we do like a silly prompt every day, but Friday is a standard prompt and it's Good News Friday. And that really does give people an opportunity to share about their life if they want to. So, Good News Friday sometimes is that thank God it's Friday. We hear that often, but other times people do want to share something that they're going to do that weekend or that's going on positive for them. And it's really a good way to celebrate one another and get to know one another. So that's a fun little thing that we do. And then we do get together in person strategically. So what happens is there are times where from above there needs to be some sort of, you know, broader HR function get together, holiday celebration, or thank goodness for staff day, or something where we're all going to get together anyway. And so we use the morning before that or the afternoon after that event to do a team builder. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of serious Lego play. I totally recommend that. You play with Legos, but it has, prompts and meaning and you share. And so anyway, we'll do something like that, like a team builder or a lunch together or something where we are also piggybacking on a time where we have to get together for something bigger.
I love that. And so the message as you're listening in today is if we want to create a high performing hybrid workplace, if we want to support people to actually turn off work on vacation, if we want people to feel like they can make adjustments for their life changes, building that sense of team, that trust, that reciprocity is critical. And you guys have just done such a fabulous job of making that happen. I'm really impressed. And I think people are really appreciating hearing what you had today. So thank
Uh,
you, Julia.
Thank
That's
you
great.
so much.
All right, we're going to hear from one more person, and don't worry, you'll hear some more from Julia in a little bit. I also invited Anna Scott to join us today because today we're looking at vacations and we're looking at summers. And we're trying to say to ourselves, how do we make the most of these different times when we want to turn off work and really have time to focus on our lives outside of work? Anna Scott is the organization effectiveness leader at Slalom Consulting. She manages a hybrid team. She's the parent of two children, ages 13 and 16. And with that experience, she's been thinking about work and family for a while and over the summers. And so she's had many different chapters. That's one of the things we talk about at ThirdPath is that summers really change as the age of your kids change. And so when Anna and I were reflecting back, we were thinking about how we've known each other since her kids were very young. And summers look so very different. So before we jump into summers, I bet you heard some of the things that Julia said, and they sounded familiar for how you're trying to build that sense of trust and sense of connection as a team. What are some tips that you've learned around building trust, reciprocity, and teamwork?
It's interesting to hear what Julia had to say because it's very much aligned. I work in a very different world as a consultant. My team is out working with clients day to day. So I think, even pre-pandemic, we were all dispersed, and I don't work day to day with those who report to me necessarily. And so it's always been a practice that we've had to build to maintain that connection. So I might actually talk to any member of my team once a month for 30 minutes, but I'm also using the Teams chat. I'm also just trying to keep tabs on what's going on and making sure they're okay and building that personal connection. So I think everything resonated.
Yeah. In fact, I remember learning from you a long, long time ago that when you start a project with that goal of kind of building that reciprocity and understanding people need time for work and life, you start projects by asking people, hey, this project's getting launched. It's going to take this long. What's on the horizon for you that's really important? How has that helped your team build a sense of reciprocity and deal with summers and vacations and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that come to mind. First and foremost, I think setting norms, that's been kind of a buzzword of mine for a few years, and it definitely helped take us through the pandemic and all of the changes that we experienced through that, and then over the last couple of years. And we really do have a practice of when we're kicking off project of gosh, we have a PowerPoint slide that we use to just share a little bit about ourselves. Some of it is work related, some of it's personal. We talk about working styles. We talk about when we're online. So one thing that I share with people is that, hey, there are times during the middle of the day where I may not be available because I'm, picking my daughter up or, making sure that they're getting to their appointments or any number of things. However, I may be on a little later at night. That's something that I do, but I don't expect it of you. And so we just try to be really open with where our personal boundaries need to be based on where we're at in life, but then also coming to some agreement about what we can expect. So when are we going to meet? Are we going to have those daily check-ins or, make sure that we're available during core hours? And that varies by project.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, so what you're hearing from Anna is that point I made right from the start. There's a little bit about solving all this is a little bit about flexing where and when you work. And I'm going to underscore something Anna said about that in a second, but it's also how much you work. So Anna's letting us know, and actually her team know, and she told me about how summers today, one way summers work is because of thinking about when she works, because during the school year, that whole idea that you might check out a little bit in the afternoon when the kids are first home, although you and your partner share that responsibility in a wonderful way. In the summers, that's less of an issue because they might be involved with something all day long, the kids, and so you don't need that afternoon thing. So it's the rhythm changes for you as a parent with this age kids in the summers. So that's a flexing when you work. But what you don't know about Anna is forever, she's also been careful about how much she works. So she was thoughtful and said, you know what? I want to have time and energy for my family. So I'm going to set some boundaries and not have work take up too much of my life, but also have time and energy for my family. Anna, how much did that skill of learning how to set some boundaries around work helped you get good at turning off work on vacations and creating summer plans that worked well? How did that skill come in handy?
It was really incredibly helpful. I think that I do have that habit, and I will be the first to admit that it's something I have to practice and sometimes remind myself. There are times where, looking back at last summer, where actually all of 2023, when I took vacations, I did not do a very good job of it and was not, just wasn't satisfied with my vacation. So reminder there that in 2024, I'm going to do things differently. But I think that I have that knowledge. I know what I need to do. And I really do view my role as a role model as well in doing that, because I don't want my team or my peers to presume that I'm available during vacation, and I am going to do what I can to support them while they are on vacation or need time away.
Yeah, yeah. And to underscore what she just said to everybody listening in today, the act of getting good at managing how much work we do is never done. We always are learning better about that, or there's always some curveball that comes along that makes it harder one year or one month. And so it is an ever reshaping art form to do it well. But Anna, one of the ways you learned how to do this managing of both work-life goals in the summer times was getting your partner, becoming really a team at home. Where did that begin, or how is that working? And what advice would you give people around that?
Um, so again, it's something that's ongoing and a habit that we've built. I think, starting back when we were planning to have a family and have kids, I think we both know ourselves well enough, and we were able to talk about what do we think this is going to look like. And then, of course, when we have a child and we, go back to work and the child's in daycare, reality and what we thought happened were two different things. And so we just have always made a point of connecting and adjusting. And sometimes that takes form in, we bring our kids into this now of just, every Sunday night, we're looking at the calendar more short term. My husband and I will look longer term, maybe once a month. We just have that habit. And then I think there have been a couple of moments where we realized that things maybe weren't working exactly how we wanted it to. I can think of one specific moment when our kids were early in elementary school, and they're busy, we're busy, and there was a lot of activities to take them to, and we wanted to make sure that they had those experiences that they were interested in having. So we definitely wanted to help support that. We were in a situation though where we were saying more of okay, I have time to take this child to that activity and you have time, and we were kind of basing it on what's who's available, what parents available. And we realized that there were things that we really didn't want to do as parents. And so we had a conversation where we just listed out those activities and what our kids wanted to do and where we felt more energy. So I don't love driving to and from soccer practice. It's up to 4 or 5 times a week at this point. And so my husband, was very okay with that. So he took on the bulk of that. I would help out when needed. Meanwhile, going to gymnastics classes or piano lessons just didn't feel very comfortable for him. So I said, okay, I will be the lead on that. So we really have appointed quote unquote leads for a lot of these things. And that's how we kind of divvy up the partnership and then work together when we need help.
Yeah. And I may be remembering wrong, but I think you and your partner, again, as a family system said, sometimes there's just too many activities and we need to kind of slow it down, because having some downtime actually has been really important for your family too. In fact, let's switch to summers, because I know that that's part of the balance of summers is, camps are important. But so is some downtime is important, and each kid has a different personality. So I was reflecting back to you about, you've gone through a few different summer schedules where, camp was part of it, vacation was part of it, downtime was part of it. What advice have you learned about finding the right mix of, summer activities that are cognizant of you and your partner's work needs, your children's needs? What have you learned around making summers work well?
Yeah, I think what we've had to do is strike a balance between what we have to do. Like we work and we need to get the work done, so we need care. And what's really best for the kid and what the child wants to do. I can't say that every time we've been faced with what do we do for a week, it's what the child wants to do. My son is a good example. When he was in, starting in kindergarten, where we had to do summer camps most weeks when we weren't on vacation during the summer. And, the first year it worked fine, the second year, not so much. And by the third year, he really didn't want to go. And so we tried to be much more thoughtful about, which camps, let him have some input into that. It may have meant that we were taking 2 kids to 2 different places some weeks, and we were willing to accept that. When those camps were more enriching and something that we could make work. That worked better. I think that we never really solved it until the pandemic came and we didn't really have a choice. The kids were at home. That worked well for him. But we also had to put some structure in place so that we could work, but also make sure that the kids were, not just sitting in front of the TV. And so we spent some time, setting up kind of some structure for them around responsibilities and activities. And that first summer we could make it work because there was a lot of flexibility in our workplaces. But it set the stage for the following years, and how we do it now is we kind of have that structure. The kids know how to manage themselves and they're home while we work. Granted, they're 16 and 13 now, so it's a little easier.
Yeah. Well, that's again where hybrid works great. As your kids get older, they want some independence, but you can be around. And so there's this great solution of being able to work while they're there. That happens just because kids get older. So I hope as you're listening in, what you're hearing from Anna is the reason we're talking about summers and vacations in January is because it takes some work to make summers work. And that what we've seen is the more you can kind of think ahead about what's going to happen, and think, if you have a partner at home, think together about what's going to happen, think about what's worked well in the past, what will work great this summer, the more you'll be feel it like there's more joy, less stress in the summers. Any last advice? I know one thought I had for you was whether your kids had any opinions about their summers. Did you get a chance to talk to them about that?
I did not. So I can only guess. They both seem to have really enjoyed the last couple of summers. And I think the other factor in there is I've always had this sense of I want them to kind of experience that boredom that I know I experienced, and I think is important. It's important to not be so busy that you don't have time just to sit in your room or go for a walk or something like that. And I think that they have definitely experienced that. And I'm definitely thankful that we've been able to do that.
Yeah, really, really good point. I was always impressed with one of the families, it was kind of in our circle. They got their kids to really enjoy reading. And so during the summers, the kids were, avid readers, reading great books. And what a great thing to get your kids involved with. We also learned something we used to call Wacky Wednesdays. Every other week, my husband and I would take turns. Once a week, we would go do something fun, he or myself, and the kids knew, oh, it's Wednesday, we're going to do something fun. So they could kind of organize their excitement around this one Wacky Wednesday experience. So there's a lot of fun that parents can learn as they think about how to make it work around balancing work and family. Thank you. Big message, listening in. Who your manager is makes a big difference. Anna, thank you for being a manager that really helps people live the lives they want to live and also do a great job at work. Thanks for that.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we're going to have one more guest come in. And what we've been learning this year is it really helps to have somebody kind of listen in to what's been said and then do what we're calling a 5-minute moment to talk a little about what they've been hearing. And so I've asked Jeffrey Bernstein to join us as our 5-minute moment person. And Jeffrey is a food science researcher. He's also supporting ThirdPath around our Parents Forum. You're going to hear a little bit more about that in a little bit. He's the primary caregiver for his 7-year-old twins. And Jeffrey's got this cool story about balancing work and family over the summers, not just for himself, but also a role he played for his larger family system. Welcome, Jeffrey. Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you. I hope you can hear me.
I hear you perfectly.
Okay, perfect. Excellent.
And I wanted to start by, you've got some great stories, but what did you hear today that you know made a difference for you as you were
Mm.
trying to balance work and family, or what got in the way of you trying to balance work and family?
Sure, sure. I think that the my key takeaways that I heard today were it's important to set proper and effective boundaries so that you are not bound to be able to feel obligated to be somewhere else when you want to be present in a different place. I think that's the very first thing. And the second thing is that when you're choosing organizations in which to spend and engage your time with, whether it be as a contractor, as an employee, it's important that the people who may or may not be supervising you are also willing to meet you more than halfway so that you can develop the right type of working environment as to effectively set expectations. I think those would be the two major key takeaways from both of the participants.
And maybe before we go further, and does the workplace get sacrificed when you create this environment? I mean, like, you're asking to set boundaries. How's this
Sure.
good for work?
Yeah, I think I draw on my own personal experience as an employee of organizations during the rise of the internet and things like Facebook. And we found that productivity rose when things were granted access and not taken away. I think that when we learn to meet our employees where they need to be, you find that productivity winds up being matched and or exceeded, right? When your personal needs are met, you often want to show up even harder. So that's been my
Yeah.
own personal experience, both as a leader and also as a parent too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I've really enjoyed getting to know Jeffrey over the last few weeks, and very creative person. And I think our creativity is very linked to our sense of well-being. And so therefore creating these teams where we're all being supportive of each other, I think you get a more creative worker who comes up with interesting, creative new
Hmm.
solutions too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you move away from an old theory of like, Big Brother's always watching,
Yeah.
right? When you're able to have trust and build those relationships as opposed to just doling out work and looking at it from a task perspective, it creates relationships and people hopefully want to have integrity and honor those relationships.
Yeah, yeah, well said. So, do you want to start with the story from a while ago around balancing work and
Yeah,
family?
yeah. I have an interesting one because I graduated and I was in clinicals and that were being driven by U.S. grants, and the grant that was funding my salary got cut, so I was forced to either find a new job up in Rhode Island where I was, or to start anew down in a new state, which is what I decided to do. I picked up and I moved to Pennsylvania. My brother at the time was undergoing divorce, had 3 young children under 3. He was working, I was not. And I came down at the right time to be able to help with what we called $10, $15 summers, where, he was working for a not-for-profit, not making a lot of money, recently divorced, trying to pay for the apartment that they were living in. So, we tried to think about activities that the kids could do on $10, $15 a day. And those kids are now 28 and twin 26-year-olds. So this is a long time ago. Um, but in reflecting on that adventurous summer, which was totally fun, I designed something very similar for my family this last summer, where I had not been very happy at work. And my husband and I sat down and we couldn't both be unhappy at work. So we had to really figure out what was best for us and the family. So I decided to leave. Instead of paying for the kids to go to camp for close to just under 10,000, we wound up saving a lot of money by keeping them home. But it was their summer before first grade started. So we got to make a whole ton of memories together and spent significantly less money than camp would have been for
Yeah,
the kids, which was fantastic.
yeah, yeah.
But it took
And
planning.
it took planning, and
Yeah.
also it took, I mean, I think really what it is also some good conversations at home,
Hmm.
and remembering to, I mean, there's so many important things from Jeffrey's story. One, don't think that you can solve it all by yourself. Like,
Hmm.
maybe grandparents, maybe aunts and uncles, maybe all kinds of people can be part of it, maybe neighbors. We did a lot of swapping of good friends that they thought they were just hanging out with each other, but we had coordinated swaps of whose kids were going where
Hmm.
as part of the solution. So kind of expanding your community, we can learn from Jeffrey's story. But working as a team around, how do we want to solve this as a family system?
Yeah.
And you guys really thought together about what made sense at that moment.
Hmm.
The other thing I really want to underscore is, we've really seen when families are saying, we want time, we're willing to trade money for time.
100%.
And So there's also a story around how to think smart about the financial goals of your
Mhm.
family so that you can have the time goals also met.
Yeah.
And so there's many, many important points. What do you think, when you think ahead about, a work situation, maybe where you're trying to do work and uh, balance some summer fun with your family and do some
Mm.
work, what will make a difference going forward?
Yeah, I think me getting older helps, to be really honest, and having navigated poorly past experiences. I think that has been the greatest educator for me. And then, of course, surrounding myself with the people who are like-minded and meeting community and knowing that there are other people that want to be active family members as well as productive, work members and wear both hats successfully without feeling as though you're being pulled like the scarecrow in left and right directions, and other ways.
Yeah.
Um, so what does it look like in the future? I'm actually still defining that right now with my husband. We are looking at right now me picking up these part-time hours, working with ThirdPath. I do some consulting hours, but I do that as I want, which is great. I get to make those hours, and that's I think that the future for us is very malleable. I think we're open to new situations. I know both of my kids really want to go to a camp for at least 1 week, but they want to repeat what we did last summer. They want to have another Abba summer before second grade. Abba, for those that don't know, is Hebrew for father. That's what my kids call me. So that's what they keep asking for, another Abba summer.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where I want to go last is as we think about summers, very wise team member said to me one time, we've got 18 summers with our kids. And so it's not just the mechanics that we're trying to plan for when we think about summers or we think about vacations, because heck, what do you really remember from, the past 5 years is probably the vacations you took, the time you spent
mhm,
with a family. It's about really thinking about what's important here. And what I hear in your story is that you've been really thinking about your kids, you've been really thinking about your partnership, and you've been saying work is part of my life, but not all of my life.
yeah.
Any other last advice you have? Maybe even if you want to say one last thing, if it's helpful, what did you learn from a past experience that you don't want to repeat that you think would be helpful for people to learn about, or some
Mhm.
other thing?
Learn how to say no. It's
Tell
the
us
easiest.
more. Tell us more.
Instead of saying I can get to it, I can get to it, I can get to it, be realistic, especially as a primary caregiver. We often forget how time consuming certain tasks are. And I know for me as a primary caregiver, one of the primary things I like to do is please those people around me. And sometimes I'm not going to be that person. And learning to say, no, I can't take that on, especially as primary caregivers transition into newer roles as their roles evolve, right? So now that my kids are in first grade and going into second grade next year, things are changing over those summers. They are getting older. I don't need to be there as much. So as I think learning to say no so that you're not overwhelming yourself, because there's still part of me and I think this goes for any parent that misses their babies.
Yeah.
And it's hard to see the change. You welcome it, but it's also really, really hard. And, of those 18 summers, I've lived 6 of them already. And that
Yeah.
makes me sad. That's a third of them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And to hear that that's what they want to do for this next summer is super sweet. But I also have the intellectual challenges that I want to continue to provide for myself too. So how do I continue to be a role model and say, hey, we can have that cake and eat it too?
Yes.
So
Yeah. We can be the third path. We can do
yeah,
this. Yes.
exactly.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Hey, wow. Thank you for sharing your story and
Thank you
what you
for
can
having
really,
me on.
oh my goodness. And what you can really hear is it's about flexing when and where you work. It's really thinking about how much work you can take on. It's the more we can think intentionally about these things, we can
Mhm.
really follow that third path. Wonderful.
Love it. Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, so we've heard from some amazing people talking about how we can make the most of vacation time, of summers, reminding us that we only have 18 summers with our children, but we have a lifetime of fun that with our partners, hopefully. We were talking a little bit about how, really creating a team at home makes a big difference. And so we just want to remind you that every other year we have something called a virtual parents forum. It's going to be happening this spring. April 19th is the opening event. You can find out more information on the website address that you see there. And we've really set up this event to be something where if you're balancing work and other things, you can still attend this event by dividing it up over a course of 3 days in smaller chunks. We've really made it very work family friendly. So take a look. This is the kind of thing we'll be talking about at the Parents Forum. All right. So I want to just wrap up by reminding you that there's lots of ways to continue the conversation. You can join our Trailblazers Facebook group. You can follow us on social media. You can come back next month for our next Thursdays with ThirdPath live podcast. And if you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we are a nonprofit and we've been successful in building a community of role models and change agents. And if you want to help us support this work and our free resources, please consider making a donation on our website. Wonderful. So I wanted to bring Julia and Anna back for a last comment. They've been listening into each other. They've been listening into Jeffrey and thinking about this idea that work is part of our lives, but not all of our lives. And we want time for our vacations. If we have school-age kids, we want time to enjoy them over the summer times. But we also want to be a great worker. We're not trying to do this and not do a great job at work. We're trying to do this, as Jeffrey said, this integrated way where we have time for work and life. So Julia, as you listened in, any last advice you'd give to somebody trying to think about these ideas and apply them to their lives?
I would say I was hoping to echo something I heard Jeffrey say, which was when our personal needs are met, we want to show up harder. I wrote that down because it's so true. And I know for myself, being able to go outside for a walk or just like take a break in between Zoom meetings, I come back and I am much better for it, right? And I can focus and do a better job. And like you said, we want to do a good job for work. So yeah, I think just my parting message is to emphasize taking care of yourself and, having those boundaries so that you can show up better.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Yes, it's really true, isn't it? You've seen it for yourself. You've seen it for your team.
Yes.
Wonderful. Anna, any last suggestions for people listening in today?
I think something that has been a key to my successes has been to share the load and ask for help. It is not something that comes natural to me, and I think that's true of many of us. And I think that not just in my partnership with my husband at home, but at work, sharing, setting expectations and those boundaries, and asking for support goes a long ways. And I think Jeffrey said this as well, that our teams and our management structures around there to support us most of the time, and they're great resources.
Yeah. Actually, one of the mottos we say at ThirdPath over and over again is team at work, team at home. That's the only way we can really do work-life integration. Well, thank you everybody for your great advice. I love summers, I love vacations, and I hope everybody listening in today got some really good tips on how to make the most of them. Thanks.